Human beings are social creatures. Throughout history, we have thrived due to this innate quality. We are meant to rely on others for support and to trust that they will have our backs. Whether it's a friendship, a romance, or a family member, everybody has the desire to be able to share themselves with another. You can definitely get far on your own. Human beings are also incredibly resilient. But there are times where a helping hand or a comforting voice can make a world of difference. We need each other. Connections are necessary in order to fulfill our needs, so if those connections are broken, it can hurt a lot. In order to build meaningful relationships, you have to be vulnerable. You have to let your guard down, knowing that you or someone else might get hurt as a result, and that can be scary. Sometimes it feels like the safest option is to just keep your guard up. Sometimes the mere thought of risking the pain is enough to keep you from letting yourself be known at all. However, just because you choose to walk alone does not guarantee that you will avoid suffering. It's inevitable. No matter how strong you are, the burden will always be easier to bear if you allow yourself to share it with another. As a child, Nami was always harboring a sense of guilt regarding her relationship with her adoptive mother, Belo. She was fully aware that their family was poor and even more so that they were not related by blood. Because of this, Nami felt responsible for the added financial strain that was placed on their mother by her and her sister's presence. Despite Belo being more than happy to make sacrifices for her children, Nami hated the feeling. She hated the fact that they were poor, not because she was ungrateful, but because she felt like in some part it was her fault. In her mind, she was nothing more than a burden to her family. When Arlong came knocking at their door, Belo gladly gave up her money and her life so that she could assure that Nami and Nojiko would live. Once again, Nami felt a sense of responsibility here. Only this time, it was paired with the incredible emotional pain that comes with grief. She blamed herself for Belo's fate. On the flip side, Nami finally understood how much their mother truly loved them, and she became devoted to the same principle of selflessness. However, she took it to the extreme. Rather than risk anyone else getting hurt, she decided to save Kokoyashi Village on her own. She had no problem carrying the weight by herself. In fact, it was easier. After what happened to her mother, Nami would much rather lose her own life than to see those she cares about get hurt in any way. When someone has been scarred by a loss, it's not uncommon for them to bury their desire for connection and to replace it with defenses designed to push it away. As previously stated, keeping your guard up can feel like the safest option for everyone. At least if someone gets hurt, it'll only be you. For it's often more preferable to suffer in silence than to potentially watch those around you suffer as a result of your problems. To somebody like that, opening up to others would be synonymous with an invitation for torture. So as Nami got older, she cut all ties to the people she cared about. She cut off life itself. All that mattered to her was getting the money for her village by any means necessary, and that was a task that she was determined to do on her own. Knowing that they would gladly aid her in her struggle, Nami kept her intentions a secret from everyone she knew, except for Nojiko. She embraced the identity of a cold-hearted thief, not only because it helped her scrape up as much money as possible, but also because it kept people at a distance. She gave up everything: her family, her humanity, and her dream. All for a false promise and the desperation to avoid reliving the trauma of her childhood. Nami chose to sacrifice 8 years of her life rather than to simply ask for help. The hardened persona that she manifested was so effective that it became her identity, and she successfully pushed nearly everybody away. That is, until she met Luffy. Even though he only knew her for a very brief period of time, Luffy quickly saw Nami for who she really was. He recognized the pure yet damaged soul that was underneath her traitorous behavior. For the first time in years, Nami found herself lowering her guard and truly connecting with people, so much so that she completely forgot about her deal with Arlong. However, as soon as she did remember, she betrayed the crew and left them behind because in her mind, she was protecting them. Friends were a luxury that she could not afford. But Luffy is Luffy, and he refused to continue his adventure without Nami. He was the perfect person to cross paths with her at that point in her life. She needed somebody like Luffy who would adamantly stay by her side no matter how much she tried to push him away. because even after Arlong broke her spirit by taking everything she had worked for, Nami was still prepared to start over. But at that point, the villagers of Kokoyashi couldn't allow her to torment herself for their sake any longer. They knowingly marched into a fight that they could not win, bringing Nami's greatest fear to the surface once again. That is when her spirit was truly broken, because there was no longer anything that she could do. The conflict and trauma that she so desperately wanted to prevent herself from reliving was suddenly very real. There have been a few times where I've heard people interpret the emotional climax of Arlong Park as a damsel in distress situation, and I can kind of understand that. On the surface, the formula is the same. The woman is helpless and needs the male characters to step in because they are stronger and more capable of taking down the oppressor. Though this storyline goes much deeper. Nami's arc has nothing to do with her being a woman. Instead, the focus is on her trauma and her journey to overcome it. You could replace her with any character of any gender and the impact would be the same. Luffy and the crew are not merely highlighted as male counterparts. Instead, they are a group of friends. Nami's struggle was one that could only be surpassed with someone else there to lift her up, because that was the very thing she had been running from nearly all her life. Although she didn't partake in the fight against the fishmen, Nami displayed the greatest feat of strength in the entire arc. She allowed herself to trust those beside her, and she asked for help. It was at that moment that she was truly liberated.
Luffy, help me.
Everybody has problems that they're dealing with and hardships that they're going through. Many of us choose to stay quiet, to face these battles alone. In fact, some will actively push back against any kind of assistance, not just to avoid being a burden, but also to protect themselves. The act of asking for help requires a high degree of vulnerability. It can feel risky. You may feel weak for even considering the option, but the truth is that everyone needs support from time to time. It's in our nature. Sometimes the best way to conquer an obstacle is to lean on others. If you allow yourself to have faith in those around you, you will go farther than you could ever imagine. That is what Nami's character is all about. That is what makes her special. That is the strength of trust.